everyone, this is Angela and welcome to my channel, Angie the ENTJ. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and click on the notifications bell so that you'll know whenever I upload any new content. I have been saying for years that we are not in a gender war. Now, before you react, hear me out, please. That's all I ask. First, let's look at a video from Sigh and then I will be back.
If I was a woman, I wouldn't want to have a child either. Why would I want to have a child? I don't need to have a child. I don't need to have a man. I don't need to pretend that I'm in love. I don't need to pretend that I want to be a mother. I don't need to stay at home and play giggle with a little child who's just another slave in the system. I don't have to do any of this shit. Why should I do that? Why should I waste my resources doing this when there's other games that are much more fun that are available for me to play? Why? And don't tell me I will find fulfillment, because my mother didn't find fulfillment. My grandmother didn't find fulfillment. And that's why I'm the byproduct of their lack of fulfillment. So I'm talking as a woman, right? I'm the byproduct of my mom, my grandmother, and all these lineages of women that came before me. And I'm the byproduct of their discontent. And then you tell me I should do the same thing as they did. Well, quite clear, it didn't work out. So why should I do this? What's the point? How's that going to fulfill me? And the only reason I did that before, or a couple of generations ago, is because the zoo required me, through its ordained religious priests and its science of the time, which was religion, that imposes us to do that and gave us, this is what you are as a woman, you're supposed to give birth. And you as a man are supposed to go work in the field like a donkey. This was ordered by the zookeepers in order for us to create more slaves so that we can build the zoo and make the zoo structure increase and grow and grow and grow. So I didn't really want to have a child. I was obliged to have a child. It was what I did because there's nothing else to do. And that was what was told to me to do, even though it may match my biology. I didn't necessarily want to have a child. What for? What's in it for me?
Okay, I'm back. And disclaimer, I don't fully agree with all of Sigh viewpoints, but his particular observation in this video is similar to my own. I know that on the surface it can appear that we are in the throes of a gender war. I do see how many would even argue against what I am claiming because they are seeing the divide, and that divide appears to be clearly between men and women. Trust me, I totally get it. However, one would have to understand the bigger picture in order to see why I am saying that this is not a gender war. And before I go any further, I am not at all dismissing the plight of us women. I want to make that very clear. I am a woman, a black woman on top of it, and I have suffered like many others. What I am actually saying is that we need to zoom out a bit or take a few steps backwards so that we can all see the big picture, because many of us are looking at the situation and all of its details very close up, which, hey, that's very fine and necessary. We need to, microscope zoom in on every aspect of this situation. However, the concern is that people are viewing the closed up or zoomed in point of view as if it is in and of itself the big picture. And I am here to say that there is a bigger picture, which is why I am saying that we are not in a gender war. Rather, what we have been seeing is the irreversible collapse of an economic scam which divides a society into different tiers so that the age-old tactic of divide and conquer can be implemented.
Holy shit. Here it comes. Yeah. Holy fuck. Holy fuck. There she goes! Holy fuck! Everybody off!
Generally, in such a system, there's a permanent underclass, which consists of the majority of people in most societies. Then there are those who are slightly better off, and above them are those who are privileged, and then there are the elites. Okay? So what's happening is that the permanent underclass is saying, nuh-uh, I don't want to be the permanent underclass beneath anyone. I'm moving on and I'm going to do my own thing. And yes, it's primarily women who are making the moves, but if you look around very closely, there are some men coming along with us. Okay? So a bit of history that proves my point. For instance, Queen Victoria was a reigning monarch during an era where women did not have the right to vote, they could not sue for damages, or to own property if they were married. One decree from Queen Victoria could have changed those laws overnight. However, during her reign, women were routinely fitted with a device known as a scold's bridle, which was a humiliating punishment for being outspoken. And although rare, there's also evidence that men were subjected to this type of punishment as well. And a lot of times, in addition to being humiliated with this device that was locked on their head, there was a part that went into the mouth that weighed down the tongue. Sometimes it had spikes on it. A lot of times it was roughly grooved and very heavy. And so people could not eat, they could not drink, they couldn't speak while they were in this device. Okay? So dividing and conquering while leaving one side privileged and the other side as a permanent underclass was the same tactic that was used in colonialism and could be seen as one of the major reasons for tragic events such as the Rwanda Civil War, where girls and boys, men and women of all ages and backgrounds were targeted and unalived. So going back to what I was saying about what we're seeing before us is not a gender war. It is a collapse of an economic scam of global proportions that used multiple institutions to create circumstances which would keep the poor as poor, backward, illiterate, self-sabotaging fools, so that the rich can stay rich without being challenged by the rise of a hardworking, educated, and skilled demographic. So what's happening is that some of the most disadvantaged people within the system, are beginning to say, well, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. So you know what? I don't. I'm not rewarded for my efforts, so I'm going to stop giving any effort at all unless it benefits me exclusively. So those people, in this case, primarily it would be black women, but if you look at other societies, you'll see, who they are as well. Those people got an education, gained skills, and with their knowledge began to gain access to resources, and with those resources began to live better, live longer, become healthier and wealthier. Meanwhile, other people began to leave the scammers as well because, they basically said, hey, you're telling me to look down and discriminate against them over there, but they're over there doing well, and you got me over here living like scum. So other people started to depart and to join the hardworking people, and then their collective began to form a society that operates according to their own principles. See, in Blackistan, it was the girls and women who were the most disadvantaged and abused, but we were not the only ones. There were boys and men who were bullied, beat up if they refused to join gangs or to sell narcotics, and if they were talented in ways that were not considered to be domineering, masculine, and macho, if they were into academics, especially topics that favored literature and arts, and heaven forbid if they held points of view that were in agreement with women, even if the point of view had nothing to do with gender, but just the mere fact that they agreed with us was enough for them to be abused by their fellow brothers. So when the collective of black women began to exit from this scam, what Sigh Damani referred to as the zoo, those who were left behind were left to hold up the weight of that pyramid scheme. And as soon as black women left, and those who were left behind began to feel the weight on their shoulders that black women were holding up all this while, and when they saw that their privileges were only as good as when they had us black women to use it on, as soon as they were subjected to the same pressures that black women collectively were expected to face without any regard to our humanity and without any expectation that we would complain, the next group, those who felt the heat, exited the scam and became refugees over here in the space that we black women initially created. So now we are at a point where those who were considered the elites within that old scam system, the Pookies, the Ray Rays, and their bottom chicks, are now left up to hold up the weight of their pyramid scheme that benefited them, except they are not willing to do the things that they forced others to do. And they are not willing to do what black women collectively have done as far as putting in the work to become educated and to hustle and to secure our future. They also cannot look at the boys and the men in the eyes who they have bullied, calling them simps for aligning with black women, especially when now those very same boys and men are better off than the bullies themselves. So what the former elites within that scam are doing, they're trying to cook up another economic scheme that enables them to maintain power and control while depleting us of our resources. The collapse is not exclusive to Blackistan, by the way. Here is a video from about 5 years ago in Iran where the religious police violently attacked a young woman for loosely wearing her hijab or scarf on her head. And you will notice that it was primarily women who were beating her upside of her head. Viewer discretion advised. Let's watch the video briefly and then I will be back.
A video has emerged from Iran showing morality police women assaulting a woman over her mandatory hijab. The video has reignited debate over the decades-long requirement for women to cover their hair in the Islamic Republic. The video appeared online last week with activists suggesting it was taken in Tehran, though nothing in it offers hints of its location. In the video, a woman with a long red scarf loosely over her head is talking to religious police officers. She is quickly surrounded by 3 religious police women who grab her. One grabs her by the throat before they briefly pick her up off her feet as she screams. She ends up on the ground weeping as another woman confronts her before the officers grab at her again. The victim can be heard screaming, and I quote, "Why are you hitting me? You have been destroying us for 30 years," unquote.
I'm back. This is the same thing that happened to Mahsa Amini that resulted in the ending of her life. When Iranians took to the streets, it was girls and women who were leading the charge without a doubt. But there were also young men, boys alongside them who were out there protesting as well because they too have suffered abuses at the hands of the same institutions. Another example is the Fundamentalist Church of Latter-day Saints, or the FLDS. It has been collapsing in a similar fashion for years as well, and the decline is becoming worse. Side note, they were all Mormons at one point, but the modern day Mormon church is not affiliated with the FLDS. So that's the end of that side note. So initially, the collapse began with mostly the girls and the women escaping the community. A sizable number of young men are leaving it as well in this modern time. Similar to Blackistan, the issues within the FLDS community have been going on for more than a century. And it can be evidenced within a book titled Wife Number 19, or The Story of a Life in Bondage, being a complete expose of Mormonism and revealing the sorrow, sacrifices, and suffering of women in polygamy. This book was published back in 1876 by Anne Eliza Young, who was the actual 19th wife of Brigham Young. And this was published before the Mormon Church split into Mormon and FLDS, by the way. So she was the actual wife of Brigham Young, and this was the man that led the Latter-day Saints, or the Mormons, from Illinois to Utah. And he had 56 different wives and an estimated 57 children. So Anne Eliza Young, the 19th wife, is the reason why polygamy is illegal within the United States. And she wrote about what happened not only to the women, including herself, but she also wrote about what happened to men who chose to leave the religion, to leave Zion because they saw that they were going to Zion, and those men who decided to return to Babylon or to go back east and, leave it all behind, saying, this isn't what I signed up for. I'm getting out of here. So let me read a passage from page 104 of her book, which is also the beginning of the 9th chapter, to give a perspective of why I am saying this is not a gender war, but the collapse of an economic scam. So chapter 9, the hardships and perils of life in a new country. And so the new country that she's referring to here is Zion, or Utah, okay? And it reads, the first years of life in a new country are full of hardships, peril, and adventure, and all these the Mormon people met. Bear in mind, she's speaking in a manner that was common during the 19th century, so at times she's not as direct as we are today. Basically, what she's saying is that the fantasy that led them to Utah was slowly beginning to fade into reality, okay? So let me continue. She says, I can remember listening in round-eyed wonder and terror at recitals of Indian atrocities, for we were surrounded by the wandering southern tribes, and they were constantly thieving from us, and a murder was by no means an uncommon thing. Again, she's sharing a very biased perspective that was common in the late 19th century, and unfortunately it paints the Native American in an unfavorable light because they are seen during the time as thieves and unalivers, and not as people who are defending their land against the invaders. So let me continue to read. And she says, when a man left home and failed to return, the general verdict, as a matter of course, was that he was, quote, killed by the Indians, end quote. Did an exploring party visit the territory and failed to leave it again? I'm assuming that when she says the territory, it's speaking of where the Native Americans resided at the time. So, did an exploring party visit the territory and fail to leave it again? Their fate, if it was ever alluded to at all, was regarded as, quote, massacred by the Indians, end quote. It is a significant fact that most of the persons who thus perished were, and pay attention to this, Gentiles, apostates, or people who for some reason or other were suspected by or disagreeable to Brigham Young. So Brigham Young was the leader of the Mormons. He's the head honcho. And so anytime people just said, you know what, this isn't working for me, I'm leaving while I still have time on my side, while I still have resources, I can go and make a better life for myself elsewhere. What she's saying is that coincidentally, those were the people who ended up, quote unquote, killed by the Native Americans. Okay, so let me continue. She says, and it came presently to be noticed that if anyone became tired of Mormonism or impatient of the increasing despotism of the leader and returned to the east or started to do so, he invariably was met by the Indians and killed before he had gone very far. The effect was to discourage apostasy, and there was no one but knew the moment when he announced his intention of leaving Zion and returning to quote-unquote Babylon, he pronounced his unalivement sentence. And she continues, this is what they would do. He was never, this is what they would do when the guy said, you know what, y'all are good people, but I'm moving on, okay? So this is what the good people in quotes would do. He was never discouraged from his plans, nor was any disapprobation of his course expressed. The faces were as friendly that he met every day, the voices just as kind. His hand was shaken at parting, and there was not a touch either of warning or sarcasm in the quote-unquote Godspeed and the bon voyage. So they were shaking this man's hand, patting him on his back, saying, oh, bon voyage, you're going to do good. Godspeed. This is what they were doing. So let me continue. But he knew he was a lucky man if in less than 24 hours after leaving Salt Lake City, he was not lying face downward on the cold earth, shot to death by an unerring rifle ball, while the stars looked sorrowfully down, silent witnesses on this deed of inhumane butchery. And a man rode swiftly cityward. In other words, whoever would shoot would turn around and ride back to the city, carrying the news of the midnight murder to his master, who had commanded him in the name of his religion to commit this deed and send an innocent soul before its maker. Quote, ah, poor fellow, killed by the Indians, end quote, said all of his friends, but Brigham Young, her husband, and Bill Hickman or Port Rockwell knew better. The Indians have been convenient scapegoats and alternate allies and enemies to Brigham Young. So as you can see, the FLDS has issues with gender inequality without a doubt, like many other societies, including Blackistan. However, if you look very closely, the discontent is not exclusively with the women. They needed the men's muscles to do the heavy lifting, to do the guarding, and to unalive others on command. They did not want those young men who saw through the bullcrap to leave and get to telling other young men how things really are over in Salt Lake City at the time. At that point in time, they needed to attract as much muscle into their empire as possible. They had to trick them with fantasies and with the hope of one day having at least 3 wives each, catering to their every domestic need while they are seen as noblemen within their community, so long as they spend the prime years of their lives working to build another man's dream instead of their own. And as I said earlier, because some people like to go off the rails and take things to the extreme, I'm not saying nor suggesting that the plight of women is invalid or exaggerated. I am a woman, a black woman, and I've been abused too. We must never forget. We must continue to push forward the envelope on issues that concern us absolutely. Okay, what I'm doing is clarifying what I'm saying before people try to put words in my mouth. I just want to put that out there. So what I am saying is that we need to see the truth for what it is so that we don't end up imitating the very people who we are protesting against, or worse, due to our own unintended ignorance, play into their hands and do exactly what they're wanting us to do. Calling what is happening a gender war versus taking a few steps back and seeing it for what it is, which is the collapse of an economic scam, allows the very people, the Pookies, the Ray Rays, and the bottom chicks, the ability to hide from accountability and to disguise themselves as they try to maneuver over here under the cover of being a victim when they are actually wrongdoers who are trying to avoid cleaning up their own messes. I already posted a video talking about how the demagogues are over here trying to shift their grift. And I've already, for those of you who've been with me for a while, you know that I was a part of the natural hair movement, and I said the same thing happened more than 25 years ago. Same exact behaviors. I've already posted a video, and right now, just like they did back then, they are desperately trying to figure out a way to gain access to us and our resources over here so that they can sabotage it and also reignite their economic scam. This is why they're wanting women to accept Waffle House dates, to be cool with having a dude who can only give some loving and some light bill money. This is why they're mad at us for obtaining degrees, opening businesses, and raising our standards of living, traveling around the world and doing stuff. They are angry because we are no longer disadvantaged enough to be desperate enough to do their bidding. And they become frightened. This is the key thing. They become frightened when more and more men are coming over to where we are. Because, see, listen, when men fight other men, they tend to go for the jugular, especially when they are defending women and when they are defending their families. That's the real reason why they want you to see it as a gender war, so that you don't align with the men who actually agree with you and who actually support you. And it also becomes a safe cover for them to come over and harm you all over again. Don't fall for the trickery. Don't allow them to love bomb you. Don't allow them to run the I'ma change Pookie or I'ma change Pick Misha game. No, they are not. What's happening is that they have been left to clean up their own messes, and they don't know where to start because they were used to us doing it for them. So they're trying to figure out how to lure us back under their influence. My advice is to treat all of them like suspects. They're guilty until proven innocent, and even then, they're on probation. That's all I have to say for now. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and click on the notifications bell so that you'll know whenever I upload any new content. Take care until next time.
When it all falls down.